The cottage smelled of rain and old wood when Lan stepped inside. She closed the door, shutting out the storm and the noise of Portland behind her. A box sat on the table, sealed with the law firm's logo in blue ink. Her hands shook as she opened it, the cardboard damp from the mist. Inside lay her father's old phone, a leather-bound journal, and several envelopes. The phone case was cracked, the university sticker faded at the edges. She pressed the power button, half afraid of what she might find. The screen flickered, and then messages filled the display, dozens of them. "Dad, I need $5,000. It's a safe investment. Come on, I'll pay you back, promise." The last one stopped her breath. "If you loved me like her, you'd help me." Lan stared until the words blurred. Her chest tightened with an ache she thought had healed. She scrolled through the bank alerts, the transactions marked loan in her father's notes. $15,000 to Kwong, transferred last March. In the memo line, her father had written, "Final loans, no more." She opened the journal, fingers tracing the familiar handwriting. December 15, one entry began. "Kwong came again, asking for money. He's chasing some online betting scheme. I told him no this time. He called me a coward." Lan's throat burned. She turned the page, finding her father's neat letters steady even in pain. "I worry about Lan. She carries peace for everyone, even when it costs her own." The words felt like a mirror pressed against her heart. She remembered the Christmas her mother's jewelry disappeared. She found the pawn shop receipt in Kwong's coat pocket. She lied for him then, told her father it was a break-in. That lie had become habit, like breathing. The rain outside grew heavier, the sound like static against glass. Lan sat at the table, surrounded by the evidence of her father's quiet heartbreak. He'd known everything, yet still loved them both. Still tried to keep them together. But blood had never meant love. It only meant more pain when the cuts went deep. Her phone buzzed. A new message appeared from an unknown number. "Guess you're enjoying the money, huh?" It was Kwong. She didn't reply. She powered off the phone and placed it gently beside the journal. The house felt too quiet, the kind of silence that held its breath. Lan opened the window, letting the cold air in. The wind carried the scent of salt and pine, wild and cleansing. She whispered to the empty room. "I know now, Dad. You were trying to teach me to let go." The words dissolved into the night. She closed the window, turned off the light, and let the darkness fold around her like mercy. For the first time in years, she didn't dream of family dinners or apologies. She dreamed of waves, breaking and returning, endlessly free. The first call came at midnight. Lan stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. A minute later, it rang again. Same number. Same silence when she finally answered. Then his voice, smooth and poisonous. "You think you can walk away from family." She hung up without a word. But the calls didn't stop. Morning, noon, and late at night. Each one left her heartbeat trembling like glass. She changed her ringtone, then muted the phone entirely. Still, the messages came. "You owe me. Dad would want you to help. Don't forget where you came from." She deleted them all, but the words stayed in her head. By the end of the week, even the rain felt like knocking on her window. Her boss called, asking if she needed more time off. Lan said no. She needed work to drown out the noise. At the market, she caught herself checking every reflection. A shadow behind her made her flinch. Kwong's voice echoed from memory, laughing. "You'll come crawling back when you realize who you are." She knew what he meant, control, not care. Love was never part of his language. Her Aunt Thur called the next day. The voice was sharp, full of accusation. "How could you treat your brother like that? He's family." Lan closed her eyes. "I'm protecting myself, not punishing him." The line went quiet for a heartbeat. Then came the final stab. "You'll regret turning your back on blood." Lan ended the call, and blocked the number. For the first time, she allowed herself to cry, not out of guilt but release. That night she sat by the window, the sea breathing below the cliffs. She whispered, "I don't regret peace." A few days later, she signed the transfer papers. A job opening in Seaside awaited, smaller town, quiet coast. A clean start. She packed 2 suitcases and left Portland without goodbye. The road curved through forests dripping with rain. Every mile felt lighter, as if ghosts were falling away. Her new apartment faced the ocean. The air smelled of salt and morning light. Neighbors smiled but didn't pry. No one knew her story, and she didn't owe anyone an explanation. The first night, she turned on no lights, just listened to waves crash against the rocks. Her phone lit up again, unknown number. She hesitated, then blocked it without looking. Outside, the wind howled, wild and alive. She poured tea and sat near the window, wrapped in silence. It wasn't safety yet, but it was distance. And distance, she realized, was a kind of love too, love for herself. The sea roared as if answering back. Land smiled faintly. She didn't need forgiveness anymore. She needed freedom. And for the first time, she believed she deserved it. The morning began like any other. Lan walked into City Hall, coffee warm in her hands. The lobby buzzed with quiet chatter and footsteps. For once, she felt invisible in the best way. No calls, no messages, no ghosts. Then the doors slammed open. A familiar voice cut through the hum. "Lan, you think you can hide from me?" The cup fell from her hand, coffee splattering across the tiles. Kwong stood there, rain dripping from his coat. His eyes were wild, a mix of fury and desperation. Colleagues froze, unsure what was happening. Lan's throat went dry, but her voice stayed calm. "You need to leave." He laughed, the sound sharp as broken glass. "You stole everything that was mine." The echo of his words filled the lobby. Lan's fingers slipped under the desk, pressing the silent alarm. "Security will be here soon," she said quietly. Kwong stepped closer, sneering. "Or what? You'll call the cops on your own brother." Her hands trembled, but her stare didn't waver. "You stopped being my brother when you started following me." Gasps rippled through the room. 2 guards appeared from the hallway. "Sir, step back, please." Kwong slammed his hand on the counter, rattling the frame behind her. The picture of the seaside promenade toppled and shattered. "You can't erase blood," he shouted. Lan didn't answer. She watched the guards lead him away, his curses fatting down the hall. Her knees felt weak, but she stayed standing until he was gone. When silence finally returned, so did her breath. Sandra from records hurried over, voice trembling. "Are you okay?" Lan nodded slowly. "I'm fine, just tired of ghosts." That afternoon, she sat in human resources, the fluorescent light harsh above her. The HR manager, Mrs. Thompson, took notes carefully. "We'll file a report. The cameras recorded everything." Lan stared at her hands, still faintly shaking. "Thank you," she said. "I don't want pity, just distance." On her way out, Linda from accounting handed her a coffee. "Don't let him win, dear. People like that feed on fear." Lan smiled faintly, gratitude soft in her chest. "I'm done feeding him anything." That evening, she left the building alone. The parking lot was quiet, streetlights glimmering on wet pavement. Halfway to her car, she heard footsteps. She didn't turn at first. Then a voice. "Wait." Kwong's tone was low, almost pleading. "I just need to talk." Lan gripped her keys, ready. "I have nothing to say." He stepped closer, his shadow stretching long across the asphalt. "You ruined my life." She faced him, her voice like steel. "No, Kwong, you did that all by yourself." He flinched, then sneered. "You'll regret this." Lan walked past him without another word. She didn't run. She didn't cry. She only listened, to the ocean beyond the city, roaring like applause for her courage. The next morning, Lan sat in the lawyer's office again. The air smelled of dust and paper, heavy with old memories. Mr. Leem adjusted his glasses, his tone steady but grave. "Your father included something else in his will," he began. Lan frowned, hands tightening in her lap. "A codicil, written 6 months before his passing. If either child harms or harasses the other, they forfeit their inheritance." The words hung between them, quiet and final. Lan's breath caught in her throat. Her father had known this might happen. He had known what Kwong was capable of. "He was protecting you," Mr. Leem said softly. "Even now." Lan nodded slowly, her chest heavy with both sorrow and gratitude. She remembered his voice on those late hospital nights. "You'll have to be strong, my girl, strong enough to walk away." Outside, the rain had stopped. The streets shimmered under a pale light. It felt like a sign, a breath between storms. Her phone buzzed again, another message from an unknown number. "Think you've won. You're nothing without me." Lan deleted it without reading further. That evening, she gathered every piece of evidence into a folder. Screenshots, call logs, photographs, witness statements. The proof of his unraveling. She would not run anymore. She would fight cleanly, quietly, the way her father would have done. At City Hall, the HR team filed an official harassment report. Security updated the alert list with Kwong's face. Her colleagues checked in daily, no longer out of curiosity but care. The town felt smaller, safer somehow. Yet she knew the silence wouldn't last. A week later, news broke from Portland. Walker Investment Group had suspended Kwong pending investigation. Client funds missing. Accounts frozen. The scandal spread like wildfire across the finance world. Lan read the headlines in stunned silence. He was falling apart faster than she could have imagined. Still, guilt flickered at the edges of her thoughts. She closed her eyes, hearing her father's calm voice again. Some lessons only come through consequence. That night, she stood by the sea, wind whipping her hair. She whispered into the dark waves. "I forgive you, but I won't save you." The tide pulled her words away, carrying them somewhere unreachable. A week later, a courier arrived at her office. Inside the envelope was a printed letter from the trust board. After review, Kwong's claim to the estate had been revoked. All assets would transfer to Lan within 30 days. Her hands trembled as she read the final line. The decision aligns with the codicil and Oregon inheritance law. Justice had arrived quietly, without applause. She folded the letter and stared out the window. Beyond the glass, the ocean shimmered in sunlight. Her father's promise still echoed in her heart. "Peace, not wealth, will be your true inheritance." Lan smiled faintly. For the first time, she believed him. The prison smelled of metal and bleach. Lan walked down the narrow corridor, her footsteps echoing off concrete. Booth 12 waited at the end, glass thick and scratched from years of stories. Kwong sat on the other side, thinner now, eyes hollow. The orange uniform replaced his designer suits, the arrogance stripped away. When he saw her, his lips trembled. "Lan," he whispered, "thank you for coming." She picked up the phone, its cord cold against her hand. "I came for closure," she said softly. He leaned forward, voice desperate. "I was jealous. You had everything, his love, his attention." Lan stared silent. The words felt rehearsed, like a line he'd practiced. The lawyer beside him slid a document across the counter. "If Ms. Nguyen agrees to withdraw her complaint, Mr. Nguyen will drop his claim." Lan opened her bag and pulled out her father's journal. Her voice steady as she read aloud. "Kwong refuses to take responsibility. Each time, he blames someone else for his pain." Kwong's jaw tightened. "Don't read that," he hissed. She continued anyway. "I fear I've failed him by protecting him too long." The lawyer shifted uncomfortably, pretending to adjust his tie. Lan laid the journal beside the folder she'd brought. Inside were photos, screenshots, timestamps, every threat, every lie. Security footage from City Hall. Messages sent at 2 a.m. Her own trembling voice on a recording saying, "Leave me alone." Kwong's face twisted, the mask cracking. "You vindictive witch," he shouted. Guards stepped forward, hands hovering near his shoulders. Lan didn't move. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said quietly. "I'm here to end this." He pounded a fist against the glass, chains rattling. "You think you're better than me. You'll regret this." Lan stood, calm as the tide outside. "The inheritance is gone," she said. "It's been donated to a women's shelter for victims like me." Kwong froze, disbelief flickering in his eyes. "You can't do that." "I already did," she replied. "It's the only part of this story worth saving." He screamed her name as she turned away. The guards pulled him back, his voice echoing down the corridor. Outside, sunlight broke through the gray clouds. Lan breathed deeply, the air sharp and clean. Her phone buzzed with a message from the shelter director. "Funds received. We'll name the new program after your father." Tears welled, not from sadness but relief. She whispered to the wind, "He'd like that." Months later, the prison sent notice of Kwong's parole hearing. Lan didn't attend. She didn't need to. Some stories didn't need another ending. That night, she sat by the sea, the sky deep with stars. She closed her eyes and listened to the waves. Each one erased a little more of the past. Each one whispered the same truth. Freedom isn't revenge. It's peace. A year passed before Lan realized she was happy again. The mornings came with sunlight spilling through white curtains. Her cottage stood on the cliffs, facing the restless sea. Every day began with the sound of waves and the cry of gulls. She brewed coffee, watched the mist lift, and felt her lungs fill with peace. At City Hall, her new title read Planning Director. It looked strange on paper, but felt right in her bones. Colleagues greeted her with warmth, not curiosity. No whispers, no pity, just quiet respect. During lunch breaks, she joined them at the bakery by the harbor. They laughed about small things, the kind that make life gentle. Sometimes she caught herself smiling without realizing why. One afternoon, a young woman waited in her office. Her name was Mai, eyes red from sleepless nights. "My brother says the house belongs to him," she said, voice shaking. Mom always promised it would be shared. Lan recognized the fear, the shame of being told blood decides worth. She handed Mai a glass of water, steadying her voice. "Let me tell you something about inheritance," she said softly. "It's not always about money. Sometimes it's about choosing peace." They talked for an hour, the way someone once might have talked to her. When Mai left, her shoulders were straighter, her eyes clearer. Lan watched her go, a quiet ache of empathy blooming in her chest. That evening, she met her friends at the cafe near the shore. Linda raised a mug, grin wide. "To new beginnings and stubborn peace," she said. Everyone laughed, and the sound felt like sunlight. Later, Lan walked home along the narrow coastal path. The wind smelled of salt and wildflowers. Her phone buzzed, a message from the shelter. The program funded by her father's estate had grown. They'd just helped their 50th woman start over. Lan stopped, tears rising. It wasn't grief anymore. It was gratitude. The next morning, she brought fresh lilies to her father's grave. The grass was damp, the air bright with spring. "You'd love my garden," she whispered. "The herbs are thriving, even the marigolds." She traced his name on the stone, her voice steady. "I kept my promise, Dad. I chose peace." The wind moved through the trees, gentle and sure. A bird sang somewhere behind her, brief and beautiful. She smiled and turned toward the sea, sunlight warm on her face. On the drive home, she thought of everything she had let go. Not with bitterness, but with grace. Kwong was far away now, living quietly under someone else's sky. She no longer checked the news for his name. He had his distance, and she had her freedom. The waves crashed below her cottage as evening came. Lan lit a candle by the window, the flames steady against the wind. She whispered to the ocean, "That's my inheritance." And for the first time, she truly believed it. The sky burned gold as the sun sank behind the horizon. Lan stood by the cliffs, wind lifting her hair, salt on her lips. Below, the sea rolled endlessly, steady as her heartbeat. She breathed deeply, feeling both small and infinite. Her father's voice echoed faintly in memory. "The tide always turns, my girl. You just have to trust it." She smiled, whispering back to the wind, "I do, Dad. I finally do." The lights from her cottage glowed warm against the dusk. Inside waited quiet, safety, and the scent of blooming jasmine. Her phone rested on the table, silent and still. No missed calls, no messages, no ghosts. Just peace. She poured tea and sat by the window, watching the stars appear. Every wave that broke below seemed to carry a piece of her past away. Forgiveness had come, not for him, but for herself. She traced her father's ring on a chain around her neck. "I kept your promise," she said softly. Then she closed her eyes, letting the sound of the ocean fill her world. The night settled gently, and at last she was home.